Hey guys, let's get more news about Steelers, but first, don't forget to subscribe and leave your like. Insider sends blunt warning to NFL about making trades with the Steelers. The Pittsburgh Steelers are on the prowl and primed to make a trade before the deadline to add a wide receiver. From Mike Williams to Kupp, the team has called about nearly everyone and appears to be in the middle of talks with multiple teams. If the Steelers want to execute a trade, they might have to part ways with a player at a key position. Fox Sports insider Jay Glazer believes the Steelers' sense of culture and Mike Tomlin's ability to get more out of players than other environments makes players that the Steelers could trade fools good to many teams. It is a superpower of his to keep everyone together on that same page, Glazer said. And you don't hear things about people and Steelers until they leave. I tell people all the time, don't do business with Mike Tomlin. Don't, because you're gonna think you're getting this choir boy, and then they come over here and you're like, oh, he ain't a choir boy. Man, this guy's disruptive. Right? It's hilarious. The best example is Antonio Brown, who forced his way out of Oakland once traded to the Raiders just 3 months after the deal was executed. Pittsburgh kept Brown in check for nearly a decade as he became one of the most prolific wide receivers in the NFL. There is no obvious standout on the roster that this applies to now that would be at any risk of getting traded. Either way, the Steelers are on the hunt, and teams could want a player in return for someone like Kupp, who is a premium player in a premium position. If that happens, Glazer's words could ring as sage advice. Steelers insider stirs pot on Pitt trading speedy pass catcher to land number 2 WR. The Pittsburgh Steelers had their best passing day of the season in Week 7. But that doesn't mean they couldn't still use an upgrade at wide receiver before the NFL trade deadline passes. On October 23, ESPN's Brooke Pryor suggested a hypothetical where the Steelers use third-year wideout Calvin Austin III to help them land a new WR2. In ESPN's latest NFL trade guide, Pryor picked Austin as Pittsburgh's most likely player to be on the move before the November 5 trade deadline. The only scenario that makes Austin, or any other player, a tradable asset is if trading him away gains a more established player at the position, Pryor wrote. Could Pittsburgh package Austin with a late-round pick to acquire a solid veteran number 2 receiver? When pushed to answer her own hypothetical, Pryor argued the Steelers probably won't trade Austin. But if giving up the speedy wideout meant upgrading their starting receiver opposite George Pickens, the Steelers should probably consider the move. There's no plausible trade right now that would involve Austin, but if the Steelers do move someone on their roster, he is probably the most logical candidate if it gives them a big enough upgrade to their receiver room, Steelers Depot's Joe Clark wrote. The other factor that could make it somewhat plausible is that Roman Wilson is probably Pittsburgh's long-term option in the slot. Austin hauled in a 55-yard touchdown in Week 3 versus the Los Angeles Chargers. He's also averaged 9.5 yards per punt return this season. That's nearly a first down per punt return. That average is an improvement of nearly a full yard from a year ago. But overall, Austin hasn't been a consistent producer for the Steelers in the slot. Part of that has been the team's game plan and quarterback play. Still, Austin has 11 catches for 203 yards this season. Again, 55 of those yards came on one play. Austin had a 36-yard reception in Week 7 versus the New York Jets. But he didn't catch his other 3 targets. He's averaging 18.5 yards per reception this season, but he's not converting enough of his opportunities. Austin has hauled in 52.4% of his targets. While he's only 25 years old and still has 1 year left on his affordable rookie deal, it's possible his potential is worth more to the Steelers on the trade market over the next 2 weeks than on the team's roster. As Clark suggested, the other factor that could contribute to a trade involving Austin is 2024 third-round pick Roman Wilson. The 2 receivers have a similar skill set, and Wilson is expected to become Pittsburgh's slot wideout of the future. The question, though, is when will that future start? Wilson missed valuable practice time during training camp and the preseason because of an ankle injury. He wasn't healthy to begin the regular season either. Wilson worked his way back for Week 6. He played 5 offensive snaps versus the Las Vegas Raiders on October 13. But he sustained a hamstring injury ahead of Week 7 and didn't play on October 20. Although Wilson is still the team's future in the slot, it's looking more and more likely that 2024 will be a redshirt year for the rookie. That could give the Steelers pause if another team wishes to acquire Austin in a deal before November 5. The Steelers will likely have to land a significant receiver upgrade in return to make Austin expendable. NFL rumors: ESPN host pumps up Steelers for Kupp trade. After considering making a move for Los Angeles Rams receiver Kupp, the Kansas City Chiefs pulled the trigger on a trade with the Tennessee Titans for DeAndre Hopkins. Kupp has been out of action since Week 2 with a high ankle sprain, but that hasn't stopped the trade buzz surrounding the wideout. Former defensive end Chris Canty recently weighed in on the subject with a trade destination for the Rams receiver. "I like Kupp to the Pittsburgh Steelers. That's a franchise that's been searching for another weapon at the wide receiver spot, somebody that could be savvy when it comes to working the areas between the numbers in those short to intermediate zones," Canty said via unsportsmanlike radio on X. Pittsburgh improved to 5-2 on the season with their Week 7 win over the New York Jets. The Steelers made a quarterback change for that game, naming Russell Wilson the starter over Justin Fields. Despite the team's success over the first 7 weeks, the Steelers could certainly use another offensive weapon. Making matters more interesting, LA seems interested in moving Kupp. The Rams have called teams about a potential trade. They've indicated a willingness to take on some of this year's salary and would be looking for a second-round draft pick for the All-Pro wideout. The Rams' latest injury update has Kupp returning in Week 8 for a Thursday night matchup with the Minnesota Vikings. LA also opened Puka Nacua's 21-day practice window. Nacua has been on the shelf since suffering a knee injury in Week 1. Los Angeles is currently 2-4. With the November 5 trade deadline approaching, the next 2 games could decide how the team handles their star receiver. The Rams are currently in last place in the NFC West. 2 more losses, and they'll be far more likely to make a trade. However, if LA gets to 4-4 by the deadline, they could keep the team intact and see how the season plays out. The Steelers' lead receiver George Pickens has been productive so far this year, but he's caused his head coach several headaches. Mike Tomlin drastically cut Pickens' reps in Week 5. Coincidentally, that's the same week Pickens wrote a NSFW message on his iBlack and was fined by the league. In addition to the Chiefs landing Hopkins, we've also seen the Jets trade for Davante Adams and the Buffalo Bills acquire Amari Cooper this season. Perhaps the Steelers will be the latest AFC team to upgrade at wideout. And you fan? What do you think of the situation of Cooper Kupp? Leave your opinion in the comments.